Legend Total here, and today we're going to be doing another tier list using Tier Maker. This time I'm going to be covering every faction in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires based on how much I personally enjoy their campaign. So ranking them from S tier to D tier based on fun. So this is a completely subjective tier list. So I imagine that if you were to do this exact same tier list, that none of you should have the exact same answers that I have here, because we're all going to have different preferences here. Now before we get into the tier list itself, I do need to let you guys know that this video is once again sponsored by Manscaped. So you guys know I've been with Manscaped for ages, love the product, love working with them. The Handyman is literally the best razor that I've ever had. It gets the job done quickly and it gives me a close shave, which is exactly what I'm looking for in an electric razor. In fact, I get so much positive feedback from you guys that I actually get private messages from some of you saying how much you've appreciated the Manscaped ads. So I reckon that this product sells itself so well that I implore you guys to go into the pinned comment in the comment section and let everyone know your feedback. And if you're on the fence about the product, just have a look at some people who are not getting paid to advertise it and make up your own mind for yourself. I have 100% confidence in this product. Big thanks to Manscaped for sponsoring this video. They wouldn't be possible without them. Check out the link in the description or the pinned comment in the comment section and receive 20% off plus free international shipping. Big thanks to Manscaped for sponsoring this video. Okay, with that being said, let's get into the tier list itself. So starting with the Beastmen, this is a race that I personally enjoy, but not every faction equally. So of the four, I definitely prefer to play as Taurox, because playing as any one of them, you can really get the others quite quickly. And I think that Taurox's playstyle is being extremely aggressive is just right up my alley. So this is a campaign that I've played multiple times in Warhammer 3. And it's not a campaign that I really played to like turn 100, because by that point I would have destroyed the entire world. It gets a bit pointless, but it's definitely a campaign that I've played quite a few times. As for Khazrak, I definitely play him more than average, and I do enjoy playing as Khazrak. Again, not super late campaigns, because Beastmen really get rolling quite quickly. Now, as for the other two here, Malagor and Morgor, I definitely don't prefer to play as them, but I don't dislike playing as them, because if I want to play with these characters, I usually just prefer confederating them with the other two. But overall, I do enjoy playing as the Beastmen, but those are my preferences. As for Bretonnia, this is a faction that I enjoyed more in Warhammer 2 than I do in 3, largely because I think that the changes to the walls for minor settlements is a change for the worse for them. I just don't feel like any of the real changes, apart from maybe damsels getting their troths, is any good for Bretonnia. I just don't really enjoy them as much as I used to. So of the four, I definitely prefer playing as Carcassonne. That's the one I've put the most amount of hours into. So I'm going to put that one as A tier, definitely not a deserving of the S tier spot. And as for Lewin Leoncoeur, I'm going to put him under B tier. Same thing with Rapance. As for Bordelot, I don't really enjoy playing this campaign very often. It's not bad, but I'm going to put it under C tier just because I really don't sink a lot of hours into it. I just prefer the other ones. I think these are more fun campaigns, just from my personal preferences. As for the Chaos Dwarfs, I definitely prefer playing as the Legion of Asgore. Drazoath the Ashen is definitely the one I by far put the most amount of hours into, and I play it fairly regularly. It's one of the few campaigns that I've actually entered the late stage of the campaign in, so that's got to be an S tier one for me. I definitely enjoy the other two for sure, I just have a personal preference. As for Disciples of Hashut with Astrogoth Ironhand, I'm going to put him under A tier, and Zatan the Black under B tier, because those are my personal preferences there. As for Daniel the Demon Prince, this is a campaign that I pretty much refuse to touch in Immortal Empires. I played him a little bit in Realms of Chaos. I really didn't enjoy him. I do not like the demon dress-up game much. He just doesn't tickle my fancy at all. He belongs in D tier. It's a powerful legendary lord. He can be a powerful legendary lord, but I do not enjoy playing this campaign one bit. So it goes into the D tier bin for me. I just don't touch it. As for Dark Elves, this is a race that I've got a lot of problems with it, and I very rarely touch them. But there's big variations between some of the fun Dark Elves and the least fun ones. For me personally, the one that I enjoy the most is actually Lockyer Felhard. I'm going to put that one as A tier, because I think it is a really good campaign, for sure. As for the others, they're all going to fall below A tier. As for the Cult of Pleasure, I'm going to put that in a B tier. I think the Cult of Pleasure and Harganeth are probably the two that are okay. I definitely think that Hargoneth is a lot better in Warhammer 3 than they were in 2. As for the Thousand Moors, I'm going to put that under C tier. I'm just not a big fan of them. Don't hate them, I'm just not a big fan of it. I don't play them that often. And as for Malekith and Crone Hellebron, I don't like playing these campaigns at all. I don't enjoy them one bit. I've heard some people say they absolutely love playing as Crone Hellebron, but I just can't see it. I just don't know what it is that they see in this campaign. Maybe it's just I'm just not a Dark Elf enjoyer, but for me personally, I just can't stand playing her campaign. I just don't want to play it at all. So same thing with Malekith. I just don't want to touch him. Again, it's not a reflection of how strong these factions can be. This is a personal preference as to how much fun I have in these campaigns, and I just do not enjoy these two at all. I would prefer not to play them. As for the Dwarfs, I actually quite like the Dwarfs in Warhammer 3, with the exception of Belegar Ironhammer's start position with Clan Angrid. I do not like this start position. I've never really personally enjoyed it. I like Belegar himself, but I don't like the start position. So I'm going to put this one as a C tier, because I don't think it's completely irredeemable. I definitely enjoy it more than these three, but it's definitely my least enjoyable of the Dwarfs. So all of the other Dwarfs are going to be above the C tier line. The ones I enjoy the most are definitely Thorak Ironbrow. While I definitely wouldn't put him under S tier, I would put him under A tier there. And as for the other three, I think they're all decent campaigns, and I think they all belong under B tier. And I think that B tier is not a bad place for any campaign to be. I imagine that most of these campaigns are going to end up in either A or B tier, with the outliers being the S tier and the D tier. Then we've got the Empire here, which I'm not a huge fan of in Warhammer 3. I definitely enjoyed them more in Warhammer 2. Especially with the Imperial Authority guys. So both of them are going to go into C tier because I just do not like managing Imperial Authority in Warhammer 3. I didn't really like it that much in Warhammer 2 either, but I really don't like it in Warhammer 3. As for the other two, they don't have to deal with Imperial Authority. So as for the Cult of Sigmar, he's actually got a really good campaign mechanic. So I'm going to put that under A tier. I quite like that. As for the Huntsmarshal Expedition, I don't like the bloody armies spawning every 5 battles, basically. Those bloody Lizardman armies. But at least you can turn them off. And he does have campaign mechanics to compensate for it. I didn't really like it much in Warhammer 2, but I can tolerate it in Warhammer 3. And I think it's okay. So I'm going to put it under B tier there. I think it only just gets into B tier. Otherwise it would have been in C tier. As for Cathay, I actually quite like Cathay. And I definitely think that Yuan Bo is my favorite of them, and I don't think he belongs in S tier, but I would put him under A tier, I think. You'll often find the DLC characters will enter, not all of the DLC, but most of the ones that will end up in S tier are going to be DLC. Because the DLC characters have extra layers on top of their base game counterparts in regard to like a campaign mechanic, which is the case for Yuan Bo. I actually really like his campaign mechanic. And I also really like that even though his campaign is easy, you have the option for a really ambitious campaign by holding on to 2 start positions, so I quite enjoy that. As for the other two, I enjoy them. I think they're good campaigns, but I'm going to put them under B tier here. They're pretty vanilla, I'd have to say, and I don't think the rework did anything to really change how I feel about Cathay as a race. Overall, I like them, I just don't think that they're my favourites. Then we've got the Greenskins. I think that the Greenskins are in a good place in Warhammer 3 for sure. I think they're fun. I don't think any of these campaigns are bad, but I think the outlier is definitely Grom the Paunch. I'm going to put him under A tier. This is a fun campaign, one that I've played a few campaigns of in my own time. I don't think I've actually done a live stream of Grom the Paunch yet. Can't remember. But I do really enjoy playing as Grom the Paunch. I like his campaign mechanic, which has been essentially duplicated several times now. Mother Astankia and Kugath Plaguefather and Festus, which is the same as Kugath. But anyway. As for the others, I think they're all pretty much on the same tier. The Greenskins are a strong race. I do get a little bit bored of them fairly quickly, which probably means that I quit the campaigns a little bit early, but I like all 4 of these campaigns pretty much equally. I think they're all enjoyable, but just not A or S tier worthy. As for the High Elves, this is a race that in Warhammer 2 was arguably one of my favorites. No, it definitely was one of my favorites. Who am I arguing with? But in Warhammer 3... they took at least at the start of Warhammer 3, I wasn't super fond of the changes that were made to them. And I'm still not 100% on board with them, but I do still really enjoy playing as the High Elves. My favorite of the 6 is definitely Nagaroth, which I'm going to put as S tier, and playing as Tyrion, which I'm also going to put as S tier. I have put many campaigns and many hours into these two specifically. These are my go-to campaigns. Now, as for Avalon, I'm going to put it under A tier. I like the campaign. As for Eltharion, again, A tier. Really like his campaign mechanics. His split start is a little bit more trouble than it's worth. It doesn't make a lot of sense since he's supposed to be hunting Grom the Paunch, and he's actually not near Grom the Paunch, except that he is in his start position. So there's a few things with Eltharion that get me questioning what they've done with him just a little bit. But overall, I do really enjoy the faction. As for the Knights of Calidor, really enjoy playing as them, so I'm going to put them under A tier. They're in a bit of a precarious position being close to the Chaos Dwarfs now, but I think that just adds a bit of nuance to his campaign. But as for the Order of Lawmasters, I do not like their start position. Being close to Kairos Fateweaver and basically them being your first enemy is a pain in the ass because all of Kairos' territory is all just red. It's just not habitable climate, which means that playing as the Order of Lawmasters, and you're going to have to fight Kairos. There's no other way around it. You are the first person that they're going to fight. It's just, it doesn't lead to building much of an empire. So you have a really sort of slow start. And then you've also got the northern positions, which are surrounded by friendlies. So you're not really going to go and pick a fight with them. So I just don't really like the Order of Lawmaster start position. It's definitely a different campaign, but just not one that's tailored to me. I'm going to put that under C tier because I definitely don't think it's worthy of D tier. High tier, the High Elves are a fun race in general, but I think that just his start position just doesn't do it for me. Then we've got the Exiles of Khorne, which is my actual favorite campaign to play in Total War Warhammer 3. So I'm going to put this under S tier and the front position at S tier. Now, the funny thing about Khorne is that this is the race that I expected to like the least because it is just not up my alley. It is a non-spellcaster faction that is mostly melee focused. Why the hell is it the most fun for me? And just because the campaign mechanics that complement your battle mechanics and your legendary lord just being such a powerhouse leads to just so much carnage, and it plays out exactly the way it should, in my opinion. It probably a bit overpowered, but I've played more campaigns as Skarbrand than any other faction in Total War Warhammer 3, so it has to get that position, and I just thoroughly enjoy my time playing as Skarbrand. Even when I get into a disaster situation, I just enjoy playing it because it is developed in such a way that you actually feel like you are a Khorne worshipper, even though I'm really not. So they did a really good job with it. Then we've got Kislev. So I actually quite like Kislev. I know they're not everyone's favorite cup of tea. But of them, I think that the Ice Court is the one that I spent the most time with. So I'm going to put that under A tier, borderline S tier. I think that if their update with the latest DLC was a little bit more, just actually had more in it, I probably would have put it under S tier, but I just think it didn't quite make it. So that's my favorite of the four. Then I don't mind playing as the Great Orthodoxy, but I think it's more of a B tier faction. And as for the other two, I don't really like playing as Boris Ursus. I find his start position kind of irritating because the easy thing to do is just abandon it. And then it's kind of frustrating fighting out in the Chaos Waste, especially when you're just using mostly Kossars and then you have to deal with Archaon really early on. I just don't think it's fun. It's definitely a challenge for sure, but not all challenges are fun. And I just would prefer not to play as Boris Ursus. You know, I just don't really put a lot of hours into this particular campaign before I sort of lose interest with it. And the funny thing here is that we've got a DLC character, Mother Ostankia, who is very powerful, that I don't like. I just don't like playing as Mother Ostankia. And I think it's largely because her campaign largely doesn't make a lot of sense. Because you start off in Nagaroth, it doesn't really make much sense being there. You have to recruit Boyar Lords. You don't get Hag Lords because they don't exist in the game. You don't have a Law of Hags. It's just, and she's reusing Grom the Paunch's mechanic. I'm just not a big fan of Mother Ostankia. It's a combination of not having the right tools to make it feel like a proper campaign, and also being overpowered in ways that make it kind of boring. So you've got ways to make a faction overpowered and fun, but then you've just got cheat codes, basically. Just, hey, here's some things that just make the enemy die. That's kind of boring. I think getting up close and personal, actually having to like kill them up close, is more fun than just basically insta-killing an army with curses. I just don't really find that fun. So that's something that I kind of didn't expect would happen with me with Warhammer 3, but actually the more cheesy factions end up not being that much fun. This is weird. I wasn't expecting it. Okay, as for the lizard men, I do enjoy playing as a lizard men. I think most of them are going to get above the B line. So I think Cult of Sotek, this is a campaign that I've played multiple times, especially behind the scenes. And I have done a live stream of it. It's even a campaign that I did a modded campaign with SFO, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm going to put this one under S tier because I just really enjoy this campaign. It's got a lot of cheese to it, but you've also got some powerful enemies all throughout your campaign, so it keeps you on your toes. So that's something that I really enjoy with the campaign. I like having a lot of powerful enemies, but also the tools to deal with those enemies. That's what I like to see. So this one over here, you've got one powerful enemy. That's it, and then it's all over. Okay, as for the others, I actually really enjoy playing Nakai the Wanderer. Somebody I dumped on a lot in Warhammer 2, but his changes, obviously you got to make note that up until recently you couldn't recruit Croxigors, and that was bad, but that's been fixed now, so I'm going to put him under A tier. But if he wasn't able to recruit his Croxigors, it'd be going into D tier, but that's been fixed, thankfully. As for Oxyotl, I think it's a really good campaign. That goes into A tier, because even though he has to deal with Kairos Fateweaver early on, at least it's all green area for him, so you don't have to hold on to some really bad territory. You can hold on to that area and just keep it for the rest of the campaign, as long as you can beat Kairos. It's a challenging start position, but one that you've got the tools to deal with it. That's the kind of thing that I like to see. I think that Itza, also good, going into A tier. Last Defenders, good campaign, going into A tier. Really like it. The Tlaqua, this one here, I think is one of the most underrated campaigns in the game, because people didn't really like Tic-Tac-Toe that much when he first came in, because he was just like this flying skink dude, and just didn't have that much going for him. But in Warhammer 3, the fact that he's got access to early coattles, he's able to reset his entire faction movement using a commandment, which he's always had, a right. All this stuff leads to a pretty aggressive campaign. I think he's also got a more interesting start position in Warhammer 3 than he did in 2, because he's not sort of at the edge of a map. He can go north or south in this one, so I'm going to put him under A tier as well. As for Mazdamundi, this is the campaign of the Lizardmen that I find the least interesting. Not much has really changed for Mazdamundi, and I just find him a little bit... I think he's just behind the times. He needs to catch back up. Hopefully a Lizardman update will happen at some point, especially with the Geomantic Web. But I'm not saying that Mazdamundi is bad. B tier is fine. It's just in comparison to the other ones, I play him the least. As for Norska, this is a race that I hated in Warhammer 2, but I actually really enjoy playing them in Warhammer 3. So I prefer playing as Throg, and I'm sure some people still can't get over the fact that I actually like playing as Throg now, because I used to just hate him so much. But I actually like playing him now. And Wulfric is going into B tier, because I don't play him quite as much. I much prefer playing as Throg and just confederating him, because I think that Throg's faction-wide bonuses are a lot better. And I just like having physical resistant, not invincible trolls, but very strong trolls doing their thing. I quite enjoy that in Warhammer 3. Then we've got Poxmakers of Nurgle. So this one here, this is a faction that I really want to like, because I like Nurgle on paper, but it just isn't working for me. His start position, his faction mechanics, his unit roster, to how you recruit, it just doesn't tickle my fancy. So I'm going to put it under D tier, but I really want to like it. So I just want to point that out. This is a faction that I'm rooting for, and that I hope in the Thrones of Decay update that we can put this up to S tier, because I think on paper I should really like this faction, but I just don't enjoy it. And I've put probably the least amount of hours, apart from Daniel the Demon Prince, into playing the Poxmakers of Nurgle. I really only ever get to like turn 20 before I just like, I took out Helman Gorst, I'm done. And I think that that's not really a good sign of a fun campaign. Some people are going to really enjoy playing as Poxmakers of Nurgle. It's just not for me. I don't like slow-paced campaigns. Then we've got the Ogres. Now, this is one that I think that a lot of people don't like the Ogres, but I actually don't mind them. They're not one of my favorites, but I don't mind playing as Ogres. I think that Scrag's campaign is more interesting than Greasus Goldtooth. I'm going to put Scrag as A tier, but I'm going to put Greasus Goldtooth at C tier, because he is a fat piece of crap. Greasus does not have many redeeming qualities whatsoever. Him being super slow and kind of janky is not good. Doesn't make him fun to play. Then we've got the Skaven. My least favorite faction. Just kidding. I love playing as Skaven. And all the DLC guys go straight into S tier, because they are so much fun. So, Clan Scryer, Clan Eshin, Clan Mulder, S tier. Fun for the family and friends. This is great. All of them. That's pretty much how it was in Warhammer 2, and it's the same in Warhammer 3. Just cause mayhem, lots of fun destruction. Great campaign mechanics that vary between each three of them, so it was really good. The others are, of course, the base game and FLC characters. While I've warmed up a little bit to Tretch, I don't think he's one of my favorites, so I'm going to put him under B tier, whereas the other two I'm going to put is A tier. Good campaigns, but the DLC ones don't hold, just are way better. Then we've got Seducers of Slaanesh. This is a faction that I really enjoy. I'm going to put it under A tier. I put a few campaigns into this one, but nothing spectacular. It gets quite easy once you've conquered Ulthuan, so I tend to lose interest at that point. But there's some mechanics in there I think that are quite good. I think this one really needs another legendary lord out there somewhere, which we should be getting sometime mid next year. I don't know, but I do enjoy playing as Slaanesh. Then we've got the Tomb Kings. Tomb Kings has always been one of my favorite races, with the exception of Khalida. I've never really enjoyed playing as Khalida, and I think that her position in Warhammer 3 is actually worse than it was in Warhammer 2. So I'm going to put her under C tier, even though it's one of my favorite races. I think one of the big problems with Tomb Kings is because you can't confederate the other legendary lords, playing as the worst legendary lord feels bad, because it's like, why am I playing Khalida when I could be playing as Cetra or as Arkan the Black? And she just doesn't have redeeming qualities to compensate for not playing as the other ones, which are more interesting. Now, as for my favorite, I'm actually going to put it as Arkan the Black, because him starting off with an extra army at the start of his campaign allows you to be more aggressive. And his campaign used to be super difficult at the start, on Legendary at least, and now it's not. But I like an aggressive style. Allows you to be ambitious. So I'm going to put him under A tier. I don't think any of them deserve to be S tier in Warhammer 3. I'm also going to put Cetra, because Cetra is awesome, as A tier, but he doesn't deserve to be S tier. It's just not good enough of a campaign. As for Ketep, I don't really like his start position, but I like everything else about his campaign, especially the fact that his mortuary cult cost is reduced by 25%. That is really good and a big incentive to giving his campaign a try. And I've definitely enjoyed my time playing as Ketep, but just not as much as the others. So, well, more than Khalida. So I'm going to put him under B tier. As for Zinch, this is a weird case, because on paper, I should absolutely love Zinch, because it's right up my alley. It's the cheesy faction. It's got the cheats. It's got the cheese. It's all about using magic and bullshitting your enemies, but for some reason I just can't get into it. I don't play super long campaigns, and I don't play them very often with Zinch. I think it's a case of that I like mechanics where you have to put effort in order to get reward, and I don't like mechanics where you put no effort in and get massive rewards. I feel like the cheat codes just don't do it for me, which is weird because I thought it would have been. But yeah, you find out stuff about yourself, I guess. So as for Kairos, I definitely don't think it's a bad campaign, but for a Zinch follower to not be that interested in playing as Zinch, I think is a bit disappointing. I'm going to put him under B tier. It's just not my cup of tea. Same sort of thing with the Changeling. Having a campaign that you just can't lose it's a one-hit wonder of a campaign. Some people are probably going to absolutely love it, but for me, I want to have at least some degree of challenge to overcome. And it just feels like you're like playing outside the realm of the game, which probably very lore friendly, but for me, it gets really old very quickly when nobody else is playing against you and you're just messing with everyone. It kind of just feels like you're playing on debug mode and cheat mode, which I'm going to put this under C tier, because I've played one campaign of it, and that's probably all I'm ever going to play with the Deceivers. I just don't really enjoy playing them. Nothing, I don't know. On paper, they seem fine. I just don't really enjoy it. Then we've got the Vampire Coast, which is another race that can't confederate, which means that the least interesting faction, Sartosa, there's no real incentive for me to play it at all. I'm going to put that under D tier. I do not like playing as Sartosa at all. I like the most the Dreadfleet. I think his campaign is actually more interesting in Warhammer 3 than 2, because it takes a little bit longer to get your Necrofex Colossus Doom stack going, if you want to do that, and you start right on close to Ulthuan, so you don't have to travel for a long distance in any which direction before you have your second fight, essentially, because in Warhammer 2 you had your initial fight against Kalador, and then you had to travel for like 5 turns to get anywhere. So I'm going to put this under A tier. I think it's a good campaign. Same thing with Luther Harkon. Good campaign. You got a lot of enemies nearby. Good tools to deal with them. And as for Silostra, I like this campaign. I'm going to put it under B tier. Don't really have huge expectations for her, but I think she's okay. I think she's somewhat of an underrated faction. And I think the thing about her is that She plays differently to the other ones. You know, you've got your Necrofix character, you got your Insane character, you've got your Cyrene character, and you got your Immortal character, and you've just Sartosa Militia, and Ogres, to be fair. And then we've got the Vampire counts. So Vampire counts are in a bit of a weird state in Warhammer 3 because they are very powerful. Arguably one of the most powerful factions in the game, but I don't enjoy the way that their armies fight in battle. And I don't enjoy the fact that you can get your army obliterated and it just not have consequences. So I don't really like the way the Vampire counts play in Warhammer 3. It just feels boring to me. Like there's no challenge to it. You basically can't lose. It's not quite to the same extent as the Deceivers, for sure. But my favorite of the Vampire counts, and there's 2 Sylvanias there, one for Vlad, one for Isabella. But my favorite is playing as Vlad and Isabella. So I'm going to put both of them as A tier. They definitely don't deserve S tier. I covered them fairly recently, and it was a good campaign. I enjoyed them. And I don't think it would have made any difference which one I played, because I think what made it fun was the actual start position, rather than the unit roster of the Vampire account, which I find a little bit boring, which is why I tend to focus on hero hammering, just focus on recruiting good quality lords, good quality heroes, and I just don't care about what units I recruit. I just recruit whatever and then just roll with it. Then we've got the Drakenhof Conclave with Manfred, which I've played a couple of campaigns of this, and I just haven't really ever enjoyed it. I usually quit by about turn 15 because it's too easy. Usually by about the time I take the Black Pyramid of Nagash, I'm just like, why am I bothering playing this? I'm just not digging it. But on paper, I think it's could be good. There's just something off about it for me. So I'm going to put it under C tier. It's just not really for me. The Barrow Legion I think is fun. I do like playing as Heinrich Kemmler, and having Krell available at the start is very good. So I'm going to have that as B tier. And the Caravan of Blue Roses I'm also going to put as B tier. Both solid campaigns I do enjoy a little bit. Then we've got the Warriors of Chaos, which I think that the Chaos Warrior rework is amazing. I play the Warriors of Chaos quite a bit, some way more than others. My go-to is definitely Be'lakor, so he's going up into S tier. I do really enjoy playing as Archaon because both of these two are able to confederate the rest, so those two are my favorite by far. Now, because the others can't confederate, they're never going to hit S tier until they're able to get at least some degree of confederation. Because I think that takes away from the longevity of a campaign, not having these unique characters that you can play with these guys here. So all of these are fun, though. I'm going to put them all under A tier. Yeah, all for their own reasons, but they're all kind of rehashes of factions that already existed in the game. You know, you got Zinch stuff over here, Khorne, Nurgle, Slaanesh, that all reflect their demon counterparts, but with the Warriors of Chaos banner. So I think they all play really quite well. I really have no complaints, but also nothing special to say about any of them. I kind of want them to at least be able to confederate someone. Like, it would be nice if Village was able to confederate Kolek, for example. I don't know. Make something work out of it. I don't know. Because they did that with the Wood Elves. They made it so that Draika was only able to confederate Durthu, but everybody else was able to confederate everyone else. It's just different conditions for confederation. But at least they had the possibility for a confederation for even their most disliked character. So I thought that was good. I just saw that could have been done for the Warriors of Chaos. Okay, now as for these four, I think that Taliesin is the one that I enjoy the most. It's probably the one I put the most amount of hours into, but that's largely because their campaign mechanics, which still haven't been nerfed yet, are just bonkers mad. The fact that you can declare war on a faction and reduce your global upkeep cost, that is just right up my alley. So doing this as Total War campaigns with them is a lot of fun. And then we've got the Sisters of Twilight. I really enjoy playing as them, but I think they're just short of S tier for me, so I'm going to put them under A tier. As for Arguelon, I'm going to put him under B tier. I do really enjoy playing as him. And as for Draika, I'm going to put her under C tier as well. She's got some good things going for her. I do enjoy playing as Draika. But I do think that Arguelon's campaign is just slightly better, in my personal opinion. So there's my tier list there. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. I don't expect any of you to completely agree with my list here. And I expect a lot of you to completely disagree. Some of you might find that these are your favorites and these are your least favorite. And that's the great thing about a subjective campaign. Overall, I think that that this is in a pretty good state. There are more factions at or above the B line than below it, so that indicates that things are slowly moving along with Warhammer 3. It would be good to see if none of these factions were in D tier, but the fact that there's only 5 there, I think is a really good thing. Anyway, that's the end of this one here, guys. Don't forget to check out Manscaped, link in the description. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for supporting the channel, and we'll see you next time. Later, guys.